easiest way to get attention is to be a victim. He was like, ooh, where he going with this?
Hey, it's the husband formerly known as Prince. Any luck getting a job?
Oh, they had me driving for Uber Eats, but there were too many damn rules. Don't touch the food, don't taste the food, drive on the road.
I'm sorry, Rowdy Weddy.
What the f*** is she talking about? She didn't know. The fuck? It's the royal family. They're the original race.
When Chris Rock delivered that savage takedown, it wasn't just another celebrity roast. This was a declaration of war. And within months, something unprecedented happened across the global comedy scene. Every major comedian, from London's West End to Los Angeles comedy clubs, started targeting Meghan Markle with surgical precision. This wasn't scattered jokes. This was a coordinated comedic assault that spread like wildfire across continents.
Like the hip hop, the hibbit, hip hop, and you don't stop of racism.
But here's what makes this story truly explosive. The comedy world didn't just mock her, they systematically dismantled every single narrative she'd carefully constructed. From her claims of ignorance about royal protocol to her victimhood stories, comedians turned her own words into weapons against her. And the audiences? They ate it up with thunderous applause night after night.
Why does Meghan Markle make her own pretzel bags? They don't know why.
That's interesting. She takes it from one bag and puts it in another bag.
There's another bag.
And that confuses people.
To understand how comedy became Meghan's worst nightmare, we need to examine 3 devastating waves of attack. First, the precision strikes from A-list comedians who exposed the absurdity of her most famous claims. Second, the global comedy tour circuit that transformed her into a punchline heard around the world. And third, the brutal verdict from one legendary comedian whose psychological analysis was so savage that it became the defining takedown of her entire public persona.
We want privacy! We want privacy! We want privacy!
But while most comedians were going for laughs, one wasn't just delivering jokes. He was delivering a masterclass in destruction that left audiences speechless. That comedian's revelation about Meghan's core strategy will shock you, and his analysis exposes something darker that nobody else dared to say out loud. We'll get to that devastating moment, but first we have to start with the comedy tour phenomenon that started it all.
We love American telly. My brother's fiancée, Miss Meghan Markle, is on the American program Suits. Yeah. The only difference between that show and this is people watch this one.
Oh, hilarious.
It began innocently enough during regular comedy sets. But then something remarkable happened. Audiences started demanding more Meghan material. Comedy clubs noticed that any mention of her name triggered massive reactions. Soon, entire segments of major global tours were dedicated to dissecting her every move, every interview, every contradiction. The transformation was swift and merciless. What had been occasional celebrity roasting became a full-blown international phenomenon. Venues hosting these shows reported some of the loudest audience reactions they'd ever witnessed. Social media exploded with clips of comedians destroying Meghan's credibility, each video racking up millions of views and shares.
Now, I'll be honest with you, before I watched it, I was not a fan of theirs. Now I've actually heard their side of the story, I f***ing hate them.
And here's the truly brutal part. The more she tried to control her narrative through carefully crafted interviews and Netflix specials, the more material she gave comedians to work with. Every attempt at damage control became fresh ammunition for the next tour stop. It was like watching someone dig their own grave while an entire industry of professional joke writers stood by taking notes. The comedy world had found its perfect target, and they weren't about to let go.
The fuck are they talking about? I didn't know. That's like marrying into the Budweiser family and going, they drink a lot.
When Chris Rock took aim at Meghan's most unbelievable claim, that she knew nothing about the royal family, he wasn't just making jokes, he was performing surgery. Rock treated her "I had no idea" excuse with the contempt it deserved, and audiences across the globe roared their approval. But Rock wasn't finished. He was just getting started. What made Rock's takedown so devastating wasn't just the punchlines, it was how he systematically destroyed her credibility, step by step. First, he exposed the absurdity of claiming ignorance about one of the world's most famous families. Then he used that brilliant Budweiser analogy that made even her defenders wince.
Some of that shit she went through was not racism. It was just some in-law shit.
But Rock's most surgical strike came next. He completely neutralized their biggest weapon, the explosive racism accusations. With one simple observation about parents wanting to know their baby's appearance, he deflated their most serious charge, the The audience went wild because Rock had just said what millions were thinking but were too afraid to voice. The beauty of Rock's approach was its surgical precision. He didn't attack them personally, he attacked their story, and that story was so full of holes that comedy practically wrote itself. Other comedians were watching and taking notes. If Chris Rock could get standing ovations for calling out their contradictions, what was stopping everyone else?
They were complaining they had to pay for their own security. They were not happy about that. Yeah, they were very worried about their safety, which I get that aspect of things. After 6 episodes, I wanted to attack them.
Word spread through comedy circles like wildfire. Rock had shown the blueprint. The Sussex narrative wasn't just fair game, it was comedy gold waiting to be mined. And mine it they did. What Rock started became a template that comedians worldwide began copying and perfecting. But Rock's influence went beyond just giving permission to mock. He'd shown how to do it intelligently, how to target the contradictions rather than the individuals, how to make audiences laugh while making serious points about privilege, victimhood, and authenticity.
You a grown-ass man. You can't still be living in your mama's house, Harry.
The ripple effects were immediate. Comedy clubs from New York to London started booking acts specifically because they had strong Meghan material. Audiences weren't just laughing, they were applauding, cheering, and demanding encore performances of the royal roasting segments. And here's what made it even more brutal for Meghan. Rock hadn't just delivered jokes, he delivered a masterclass in exposing narrative manipulation. Every comedian who followed was now armed with his techniques, his timing, and his fearless approach to calling out celebrity hypocrisy. The precision strike was complete, but this was just the beginning of Meghan's comedy nightmare, because once Rock opened the floodgates, every comedian on the planet wanted their piece of the action, and they were about to get it.
And this is sweet. Meghan Markle said she has a finger they can use if they need it.
After Chris Rock fired the opening shot, British comedy struck back with vengeance. The puppet shows, the satire programs, the stand-up circuits, they all mobilized like an army responding to an invasion. And their target? Every single aspect of Harry and Meghan's new American lifestyle. The British satirists had home field advantage. They understood the royal family's dynamics better than anyone, and they used that knowledge like a scalpel. When they mocked Harry's obsession with his place in the line of succession, audiences didn't just laugh, they winced with recognition.
I don't know how to break this stew. H. And if you weren't in the royal family, M wouldn't be with you.
But the British comedy world wasn't content with gentle ribbing. They went for the throat. Their portrayal of the couple as money-grabbing hypocrites who wanted privacy while living next to Oprah became the dominant narrative. And the most devastating part? The audience clearly agreed.
In California, we're just a regular couple living close to Oprah and far from the paparazzi. Ooh. But not too far.
What made the British response so brutal was its intimate knowledge of what they'd actually left behind. These comedians understood the privilege, the protocol, the centuries of tradition that Harry had abandoned. When they mocked his complaints about royal life, it came from a place of genuine cultural authority.
She comes from an unconventional family. Yes, very different family. I was like, yeah, man, she does. Just like Harry.
The comedy circuit became a battleground of cultural identity. British comedians weren't just defending the monarchy, they were defending the very idea that you can't have your cake and eat it too. The message was clear: you can't trash the institution, take the money, and expect sympathy.
Meghan Markle has finally revealed why she and Prince Harry call each other M and H. What could it be? A mystery for the ages!
But the British assault had another layer of cruelty. These comedians had watched Harry grow up. They'd seen him as the cheeky younger prince, the war hero, the people's favorite. His transformation into what they saw as a Hollywood puppet was not just comedy material, it was genuine cultural mourning disguised as humor. The Edinburgh Festival that year became ground zero for royal roasting. Comics from across the UK descended with material specifically crafted to destroy the Sussex brand. Reviews described audiences as bloodthirsty and merciless in their appetite for more devastating punchlines.
I'm here to tell my truth and make a shit ton of money out of podcasting, as I don't have any discernible talent.
What the British comedy world understood that others didn't was the sheer audacity of the couple's complaints. Here were two people living in a Montecito mansion, complaining about hardship to a nation dealing with cost of living crises. The comedy wrote itself, but the delivery was surgical. And here's where it got truly brutal for Harry and Meghan. The British response wasn't just mockery, it was cultural excommunication. These comedians weren't just making jokes, they were formally ejecting the couple from British cultural relevance. But the British retaliation was only the beginning, because across the Atlantic, American comedy was about to prove that when it comes to celebrity takedowns, nobody does it quite like Hollywood.
Yes, Michael, we like to apologise. Unfortunately, William's hair was unable to make it this evening. It's devastating.
Oh, bravo! hilarious. Yes, a bald joke. Yes.
When American late-night television joined the comedy war, they brought industrial-level production values to the destruction. Saturday Night Live, The Tonight Show, Late Night with Conan O'Brien, they all lined up to take their shots. And unlike the British comedians who focused on cultural betrayal, American comedy zeroed in on something even more devastating: pure entertainment value. The genius of American late night was how they made Harry and Meghan into recurring characters in their comedy universe. SNL's portrayal of Harry as the dim-witted younger brother became so iconic that audiences would cheer just hearing his voice. But it wasn't just mockery, it was character assassination disguised as sketch comedy.
Another big revelation was that Meghan said that she and Harry actually got married 3 days before the royal wedding. Great, now I feel like a fool for waking up at 5 a.m. to watch two married people get married.
Jimmy Fallon's approach was particularly brutal because it came wrapped in his trademark niceness. When he joked about feeling like a fool for waking up early to watch their wedding, knowing they were already married, he spoke for millions of viewers who felt deceived. The laughter wasn't just amusement, it was collective vindication.
Generously offered to keep the wax figures of Harry and Meghan safe.
Yeah, that's correct. I would just like to say that I'm definitely not using the wax figures for stuff.
But Conan O'Brien took the mockery to truly bizarre territory with his wax figure segment. The uncomfortable sexual innuendo wasn't just comedy, it was deliberate degradation. By making them objects of creepy obsession, he reduced them from royal figures to comedy props. What made the American response so devastating was its sheer reach. These weren't niche comedy clubs, these were primetime television shows watched by millions. Every joke reached massive audiences who then shared clips across social media, amplifying the damage exponentially.
Meghan and Harry's son Archie, he's gonna grow up and be like, let me get this straight. We used to be in the royal family? Like I could have been a king and now I'm working at Burger King? Is that what you're saying?
The late night hosts understood something crucial about American audiences. They didn't care about royal protocol or British tradition. They cared about authenticity and consistency. And Harry and Meghan's story was riddled with contradictions that American comedy could exploit mercilessly. But here's what made the American assault particularly cruel. These comedians weren't just making jokes. They were reflecting genuine public opinion. The laughter wasn't forced or artificial. Audiences were genuinely entertained by the couple's missteps, and late-night TV was simply giving them what they wanted. The transformation was complete. Harry and Meghan had gone from respected public figures to late-night comedy fixtures. Their every public appearance became potential material for the next show. Their interviews were dissected for contradictions. Their lifestyle choices became punchlines. And the most brutal part? The comedy industry had discovered that Meghan and Harry material was pure ratings gold. Clips featuring them consistently outperformed other celebrity content. Social media engagement skyrocketed whenever they were mentioned. But American late night was just warming up. Because when online creators and influencers joined the party, the mockery was about to go viral in ways that traditional media never could.
My name is Megan Sussex now. Call me Meghan Markle one more time, Mindy Kaling.
It's so funny you keep saying Meghan Markle, you know it's Sussex.
When the mockery moved from professional stages to bedroom studios, something explosive happened. Millions of content creators discovered that Meghan Markle material was pure viral gold. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, every platform became a battlefield where influencers competed to deliver the most savage takedowns. The online creator assault was different from anything that came before. These weren't polished TV segments or carefully crafted stand-up routines. This was raw, unfiltered ridicule from ordinary people who felt personally betrayed by the couple's contradictions. And the audience response was absolutely volcanic.
Any type of flower arranging is just telling a story. What story do you want to tell? Maybe leave the country. Maybe disown your dad. Be creative with it.
What made the creator revolution so devastating was its authenticity. When a TikToker with 2 million followers recreated Meghan's pretzel rebagging scene with perfect comedic timing, it felt more real than any late-night sketch. These creators weren't reading scripts, they were expressing genuine bewilderment at her behavior. The viral nature of online content meant that every misstep was instantly memeified. Meghan Sussex name correction became a soundbite used in thousands of videos. Her celebrity name-dropping was turned into running gags. Her lifestyle show moments were recreated with increasingly absurd parodies.
See, I didn't know who H was. At the time, I just loved his Insta feed.
But the creators weren't just copying her content, they were improving it. Their versions were funnier, more self-aware, and brutally honest about the absurdity they were witnessing. Comment sections became echo chambers of agreement, with millions of users validating each other's bewilderment.
You're in America now, and we don't give a shit about you. You're not our fucking prince. You'll never be king. We hate your wife. Stay at home in your $29 million mansion, all right?
The podcast world joined the assault with long-form analytical takedowns that dissected every interview, every documentary moment, every public appearance. These weren't quick jokes, they were hour-long investigations into the couple's contradictions, complete with receipts and evidence. What the creator economy understood that traditional media didn't was the power of relatability. When a mom blogger with 3 kids explained why Meghan's complaints about royal life rang hollow, it carried more weight than any professional critic. These were real people expressing real frustration. The algorithms loved it. Videos criticizing the couple consistently outperformed positive content. The engagement was through the roof. Comments, shares, saves, everything. Social media platforms began actively promoting royal criticism because audiences couldn't get enough.
They're just whining millennial windbags with a permanent victim complex, knowing that victimhood is what makes them all the money.
But here's where it got truly brutal for Harry and Meghan. The creator assault wasn't organized or coordinated. It was organic. Millions of people independently decided their story didn't add up, and they used their platforms to say so. This wasn't a media conspiracy. This was genuine public opinion expressing itself. The viral nature meant that criticism reached demographics that traditional comedy never could. Teenagers on TikTok, millennial podcasters, Gen X Facebook users, everyone was united in their bewilderment at the couple's behavior. And the most devastating part, every time Meghan or Harry tried to respond or clarify, they just created more content for creators to dissect. Their damage control became damage amplification, but the online creator revolution was just setting the stage for something even more brutal. Because when professional stand-up comedians took the gloves off completely, the psychological destruction was about to reach levels nobody had seen before.
If you haven't seen the documentary, lucky you.
When professional stand-up comedians stepped into the ring, they brought weapons that TV hosts could never use. No network censors, no corporate sponsors to worry about, just raw, unfiltered truth delivered to audiences hungry for someone to finally say what they were all thinking. And they absolutely demolished the couple's credibility. Simon Brodkin's takedown became legendary, not because of individual jokes, but because of his systematic destruction of their entire worldview. His analysis of their corporate-sounding nicknames Hitch and M struck a nerve because it exposed how calculated and inauthentic their whole presentation had become.
Harry says, how do you explain to someone who's just started dating that they have to curtsy to your own grandmother?
How do you explain that you bow to your grandmother and that you will need to curtsy? Especially to an American. Like, that's weird.
And I'm thinking, maybe just tell her that your grandmother is the queen.
But Brodkin's most savage moment came when he voiced the ultimate taboo thought that millions were thinking. His observation about Meghan's motivations for the relationship wasn't just comedy, it was psychological warfare. The audience's reaction told you everything about how public opinion had shifted.
Meghan Markle is on the American program Suits.
Yes, Wednesdays, 8 p.m, USA Network. Check it out.
The only difference between that show and this is people watch this one.
Other comedians followed suit with increasingly brutal assessments. The stand-up world had discovered that audiences were absolutely starving for someone to call out the couple's contradictions without the political correctness that constrained other media.
Prince Harry and Meghan, we don't give a We don't care about the royal family.
They got a Netflix
We never
show.
cared about nothing that had to do with y'all. 1775 was the last time we gave a
What made the stand-up assault so devastating was its emotional honesty. These comedians weren't reading corporate-approved jokes. They were expressing genuine frustration at being asked to sympathize with multimillionaires complaining about their mansions and security costs.
They were complaining that to pay for their own security. They were not happy about that. Yeah, they were very worried about their safety, which I get that aspect of things. After 6 episodes, I wanted to attack them.
The security complaint became a particular target because it crystallized everything wrong with their victim narrative. Here were people living in unimaginable luxury, asking for sympathy because they had to pay for their own protection like every other wealthy person on the planet. Stand-up comedy venues reported unprecedented audience reactions during royal material. People weren't just laughing, they were applauding, cheering, and demanding more. Comedy clubs started advertising royal roasting nights because the demand was so intense.
They wanted to know how brown the baby was gonna be.
Concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
That's not racist. Even black people want to know how brown the baby gonna be.
But the stand-up world understood something that other forms of comedy missed. This wasn't just about making fun of celebrities. This was about calling out a fundamental disconnect between claimed victimhood and obvious privilege. Audiences were responding to the honesty, not just the humor.
One time, I just woke up, I'm in my underwear, I plop down in front of the TV, I turn it on. The moment I turn it on, Prince Harry's talking shit about me.
The podcast appearances by these comedians amplified their material even further. Long-form conversations allowed for deeper analysis of the couple's contradictions, reaching millions of listeners who shared the comedian's bewilderment.
He's like, Joe Rogan's giving out dangerous misinformation. And my first thought was, did I? I might have.
What emerged from the stand-up world was a consensus that transcended political lines. Liberal comedians and conservative comedians were united in their assessment that something was fundamentally wrong with the Sussex narrative, but all of this was building toward one ultimate moment. Because while every comedian had taken their shots, one legendary figure was preparing to deliver not just jokes, but a complete philosophical dismantling that would define the entire conversation.
So let me start with you, sir. You've lived a life with the royal family, you've had everything handed to you, but you say your life has been hard, and now you've written all about it in your new book, Where?
When South Park dedicated an entire episode to Harry and Meghan, it wasn't just satire, it was cultural assassination. The show's brutal efficiency in exposing hypocrisy had found its perfect target, and their worldwide privacy tour became the definitive visual representation of everything wrong with the Sussex brand. The genius of South Park's approach was how they made the couple's contradictions impossible to ignore. Flying around the world on private jets while screaming about wanting privacy through megaphones wasn't just funny, it was devastating psychological warfare disguised as cartoon comedy.
How dare you, sir? My Instagram-loving wife has always wanted her privacy!
But the most brutal moment came when the couple finally found their quiet place and seemed confused by the actual privacy they claimed to want. South Park had exposed the fundamental lie at the heart of their entire narrative. They never wanted privacy, they wanted control.
Your millions from Netflix for no one knows what.
Put it with the rest of them.
Family Guy took a different approach, turning the couple into shorthand for getting paid millions for doing nothing. Their Del Taco sponsorship joke became legendary because it captured how far they'd fallen from royal dignity to desperate influencer territory.
Babe, time to do our daily $250,000 sponsored Instagram post.
The animated world's assault was particularly cruel because cartoons have a way of crystallizing public perception into simple, unforgettable images. Once South Park showed them as hypocritical attention seekers, that became their permanent cartoon identity.
I shouldn't have left the made-up nonsense.
Family Guy's line about leaving made-up nonsense hit differently because it came from Harry's perspective. Even in cartoon form, he was expressing regret about abandoning the very institution that gave him his only value.
NBC has announced plans for a spin-off to the hit series Suits, which will be set in Los Angeles. It will focus on Meghan Markle's character's struggle to balance her legal career while also caring for an unemployed immigrant.
What made the animated assault so effective was its permanence. TV jokes fade from memory, but cartoon images stick forever. The image of Harry and Meghan flying around demanding privacy became their defining visual metaphor. The animation studios had discovered what everyone else knew. Royal family dysfunction was comedy gold that practically wrote itself. Every new interview or public appearance just gave them more material to work with.
Meghan, I'm begging you to stop now.
But the cartoon world wasn't just reflecting public opinion, it was shaping it. Millions of viewers who might never watch a stand-up special or late-night show were absorbing these brutal takedowns through animated entertainment. The cultural impact was undeniable. References to South Park's privacy tour became internet shorthand for celebrity hypocrisy. The images were so powerful they transcended the original comedy and became genuine cultural commentary.
What matters is what we have on the inside.
And here's what made it truly devastating for Harry and Meghan. You can't argue with a cartoon. You can dispute interviews, challenge articles, or respond to criticism. But animated parody exists in its own universe, where your contradictions are preserved forever in colorful, memorable form. But while cartoons delivered the visual coup de grace, the intellectual knockout punch was still coming, because one legendary comedian was preparing to deliver not just jokes, but a complete philosophical dismantling that would expose the fundamental flaw in their entire strategy.
You're complaining about your hard life, and you're so privileged. It's just so weird.
When Bill Maher stepped up to deliver his verdict, something shifted in the room. This wasn't just another comedian taking shots for laughs. This was a cultural philosopher about to diagnose exactly why every other comedian's jokes had landed so perfectly. And his analysis was more devastating than any punchline could ever be. Meghan cut straight to the core issue that every other comedian had been dancing around. The fundamental hypocrisy of wanting sympathy while demanding attention, of claiming victimhood while living in luxury, of preaching privacy while courting publicity. He didn't just make jokes about it, he exposed it as a completely broken worldview. But Maher's most surgical strike came when he contrasted their constant complaining with the stoic dignity of Queen Elizabeth. The comparison was devastating because it highlighted everything they could have been versus what they chose to become. The late Queen's never complain, never explain philosophy suddenly looked like wisdom compared to their endless grievance tour. What made Maher's analysis so powerful wasn't just its accuracy, it was how he articulated what millions of people felt but couldn't express. The disconnect between claimed hardship and obvious privilege had been bothering audiences for years, but Maher finally gave it words. His final statement about refusing to bend the knee to their narrative became the rallying cry for everyone who felt manipulated by their victimhood claims. Maher had identified the most annoying aspect of their entire project: the arrogant demand that everyone else validate their version of reality. The audience reaction told you everything. This wasn't just laughter, it was recognition. Maher had diagnosed a cultural phenomenon that went far beyond one celebrity couple. He'd identified a broader pattern of privileged victimhood that audiences were rejecting across the board. What elevated Maher's takedown beyond comedy was its intellectual framework. He wasn't just pointing out contradictions, he was explaining why those contradictions mattered in a broader cultural context. This was sociology disguised as stand-up. The ripple effects of Maher's analysis were immediate. Other commentators began using his framework to discuss not just Harry and Meghan, but celebrity culture in general. He'd provided the intellectual architecture for understanding why the comedy assault had been so effective. But here's what made Maher's verdict truly devastating. It wasn't partisan. Liberal and conservative audiences alike recognized the truth in his analysis. He'd identified something that transcended political lines and spoke to basic human psychology. The philosophical framework was complete. Maher hadn't just delivered jokes, he'd delivered a diagnosis. And that diagnosis explained why every comedian from Chris Rock to South Park had found such fertile ground in the Sussex story. But understanding why the comedy worked is only half the story, because now we have to face the ultimate question that all this comedic destruction raises. When you step back and look at this unprecedented comedic assault, a disturbing pattern emerges. This wasn't just entertainment. This was a real-time cultural rejection happening in front of our eyes. Every laugh, every applause, every viral clip was evidence of a massive disconnect between the Sussex narrative and public reality. The comedy world had accidentally become the voice of authentic public opinion. While mainstream media wrestled with political correctness and royal protocol, comedians were free to say what audiences actually thought, and what audiences thought was devastating for Harry and Meghan's credibility. But here's the truly brutal revelation that Maher's analysis exposed. This wasn't really about Harry and Meghan at all. They had become symbols of a much larger cultural phenomenon: privileged victimhood in the social media age. The comedy was so effective because audiences recognized a pattern they'd seen everywhere, or trending topics about elite complaining. The digital age had created a new type of celebrity crisis. In the past, public figures could control their narrative through carefully managed media appearances, but social media democratized criticism, and comedy became the weapon of choice for calling out authenticity failures. What made the Sussex situation unique was how perfectly it crystallized every contradiction of modern celebrity culture: the demand for privacy while courting publicity, the claims of victimhood from positions of privilege, the expectation of sympathy while living in luxury. The global nature of the comedy assault proved this wasn't just a cultural or political divide. Comedians from different countries, different backgrounds, different political perspectives all arrived at the same conclusion independently: the story simply didn't add up. Cultural experts began analyzing why the comedy had been so effective. The consensus was clear. Audiences were rejecting not just Harry and Meghan, but an entire approach to public discourse that prioritized victimhood over accountability. What historians of comedy noticed was how this compared to other celebrity takedowns. Unlike typical roasts that fade from memory, the Sussex comedy had staying power because it tapped into fundamental questions about authenticity and privilege. Psychologists studying the phenomena identified something crucial. The laughter wasn't cruel, it was cathartic. Audiences felt relief at finally having permission to question a narrative that had never quite made sense to them. But understanding why the comedy worked raises the most important question of all. In an age where public opinion can shift with a single viral moment, where comedy can destroy carefully constructed narratives overnight, where authenticity is the only currency that matters, what happens next? After witnessing this unprecedented comedic destruction, one question remains: can Harry and Meghan ever recover from becoming the world's favorite punchline? The evidence suggests something far more devastating than simple reputation damage. They've become permanently embedded in comedy culture as symbols of everything wrong with modern celebrity victimhood. The brutal reality is that comedy has a way of crystallizing public perception that's almost impossible to reverse. Once you become the punchline, every future appearance just reminds people why they were laughing in the first place. And the Sussex story has given comedians enough material to last for decades. But this story represents something bigger than one couple's fall from grace. The comedy assault on Harry and Meghan revelation marks a cultural turning point where audiences reject performative victimhood from positions of privilege. The laughter isn't just entertainment, it's rebellion against being manipulated by carefully crafted narratives. The comedy world accidentally discovered the most effective weapon against narrative manipulation, simply pointing out contradictions and letting audiences draw their own conclusions. No think pieces required, no political analysis needed, just brutal honesty disguised as entertainment. For Harry and Meghan, the path forward looks increasingly impossible. Every interview creates new material for comedians. Every public appearance reminds audiences of the contradictions. Every attempt at rebranding just reinforces why they became punchlines in the first place. The verdict from the court of public opinion, delivered through the weapon of comedy, appears to be final. They wanted to control their narrative, but comedy democratized the response. They demanded sympathy, but audiences chose laughter instead. What we've witnessed isn't just the fall of two celebrities, it's a masterclass in how authenticity works in the digital age. The comedy was so effective because it expressed what millions of people felt but couldn't articulate. And once that feeling finds its voice through humor, there's no putting it back in the bottle. The laughter has spoken, and its message is clear. In a world where everyone has a platform and comedy is the ultimate truth teller, authenticity isn't just preferred, it's required. So what do you think? Is this the end of Harry and Meghan's credibility, or can they somehow rebuild from being the world's favorite comedy target? And which comedian delivered the most devastating takedown in your opinion? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into how comedy destroyed a carefully crafted narrative, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more explosive celebrity revelations. The next video on your screen is waiting, and trust me, you won't believe what's coming next.